Welcome everyone to the Joint Finance Committee Select Board budget hearing, first FY26 budget hearing for the year. We have a pretty packed agenda. Let's start off in the library, town clerk, human resources, LCTV, assessing department, accounting department, treasurer and collector, veterans agent, a bunch of small little departments that Ryan will take care of, and their employee benefits and insurance. Hope to be out of here. Ryan, you have anything to start with? Jim?
No, just we can just quickly touch base, run through. We get the next couple next on the 28th. We have the school department, Parks and Rec, Elder Human Services, Planning and Zoning, Building Department, IT, Town Administrator, Facilities, Select Board, Finance Committee, Reserve Fund, and then on Super Saturday, February 1st, we have Conservation, Board of Health, Cemetery, Police, Fire, DPW, and a joint discussion regarding FY26 capital and operating budgets. And first up, as you said, Mr. Chairman, is the library. And the library is on the budget books in page 249.
Excellent.
Hey, Sam Alvarez, Library Director. So I'm just going to talk about some of the major accomplishments we've had this past year. Beginning with staff professional development. This year we focused on increasing what our staff could best study and develop in their profession to help our patrons. We held professional development days where staff learned professional consultants on how to deal with difficult patrons with mental health issues, how to understand LGBTQ patrons, learned about the growth of AI and ChatGPT, and all staff became CPR and AED certified. And we had more staff attending local conferences. And I also became mental health first aid certified by working with Initial Border Health. We've also seen an increase in attendance over the past year in programming in all departments in children's, teen, and adults. That's due to our increase in programming with things like author talks, offering more programs for arts and crafts, STEM programs for the teens. We now have a new 3D printing service available that just went live about a week or two ago. And more book clubs, including a book club at Dirigible, so off-site book clubs. And of course, the regular programs that we've had like summer, winter reading and mini golf. And moving forward, one of the goals we have is to work with the library trustees to prepare a new 5-year strategic plan that will provide to the MBLC. So for capital budget requests, there are no capital budget requests that we're making right now because we have a new library. So none right now at the moment. Moving forward, the only thing we can anticipate is maybe replacing worn out furniture. The furniture gets pretty well used by patrons every day. We're trying to maintain it as best we can, but right now that's the only thing I can anticipate in maybe 2 or 3 years. Okay. So the budget I originally requested was for 2 new positions. One was for a teen librarian or assistant youth services librarian for the teen room, and a 37.5-hour adult services librarian position, and to increase the children's librarian's hours from 35 to 37.5 hours, and to increase office supply requests from $1,000 to $2,500. And the regular increase that we ask for books every year to maintain our state aid requirements, and an increase in MVLC. Yeah, so that all came out to $1,030,388 in my original request. So in the revised operating budget, basically the teen librarian request looks like the finance team agrees with that request. And that would come out to about $55,434.14 for a grade 10 step 1 position. And that position is needed because the teen librarian currently works with, is basically the only position in the teen room. And we get anywhere from 30 to 60 teens in there every day. It's been pretty busy in there. Teens are coming up from the middle school and the high school. And we really need another professional position in there. The position is key to supporting the youth services team. They can help with program development, increase the programming we offer. They can help the teen librarian to either support her in her collection development activities or to do some collection development themselves. They can help conduct outreach to schools and community organizations. They can help the teens with any technology support they might have. They can help create a safe space for the teens. A lot of the teens, especially some of our LGBTQ teens, they depend on our staff to kind of talk to sometimes. They also can offer mentorship and any kind of feedback. The other request I had to increase the children's librarian to 37.5 hours. That's to keep them equal with the YA librarian. The YA librarian is currently at 37.5 hours. And the children's librarian is at 35. And basically they've been at 35 for a while now. But they tend to use a lot of overtime because the children's position requires a lot of work. So being in that room, in the children's room, the children's librarian gets asked a lot of questions by patrons, by moms, parents, caregivers. And so especially when they're working on programs, sometimes they need the extra time to just work on things that, come up. So that's why I'm requesting the extra 2.5 hours for that position. And also, the children's librarian will most likely be retiring soon. So in the future, that would make that position more competitive moving forward when we look for a new children's librarian. The other expenses that came up, like I said, were office supplies. So office supplies right now, we've been at $1,000 per year, and we pretty much use that up by the first quarter. It's pretty much because of it's a lot of supplies that go into providing for patron use, actually. So like things like printing and paper and things like that. And then, as I said before, the MVLC fees are also going up. They haven't gone up in the last few years, primarily due to things like budget and the pandemic. And so every year the directors voted not to increase the MVLC fees, but now almost 5 years from not increasing fees has kind of caught up with them. And so they've requested that all libraries increase fees. And MVLC is important because they provide our computer support, and they help us with our interlibrary loans and with reciprocal lending. So it's an important service that we can't do without. Projected 5-year operating needs. So as I said, the 37.5 hour position was not approved by the finance team, but I would like to see that position created in the near future. An adult services librarian would support the staff. Right now, patrons sort of see, so an adult services librarian will basically help with adult acquisitions, adult programming, helping with reference questions, basically a lot of the stuff that I and my assistant director do right now. But obviously I have other responsibilities as director, and my assistant director also has responsibilities. And so it's sort of extra work that we're adding on when a lot of the time the staff has to kind of take on a lot of things. So an adult services librarian could be that person that the staff could go to. So like, let's say a patron comes to the desks and asks a question. The staff doesn't have to stop what they're doing at the circulation desk and go and help. Maybe take 20, 30 minutes to help a patron with a reference question. We can just have an adult services librarian to do that for them. So right now it's either them or it's me or my assistant director, which means I have to stop and whatever I'm doing and go help a patron, or which I don't mind doing, but it's, it's just a lot. So also they could help with programming and any acquisition needs. And so that's really a professional position that could really help us out. Yep. So that's,
Excuse me, Sam.
yes.
What percentage of the checkouts come through MVLC? I didn't see it. Maybe I missed it. A ballpark.
So what do you mean?
Well, the books come in and materials come in through the MVLC.
Through the library loan, you mean?
You mean
Yeah.
interlibrary loan?
It says in here, 23% of the
Yeah, so-
borrowing is
Okay.
between Littleton and other libraries.
Yeah, so 23% of our lending goes to other libraries. So maybe Groton or Andover.
Okay.
Sam, I think, I think you undersold the increase in usage of the library. I mean, 1,200 a month to 3,200 a month. I mean,
Yeah.
I think if we have any other department saying that their usage had close to tripled, they'd be asking for more than an extra 2.5 hours.
Yeah, it certainly has increased. We built a new library. We've seen a lot. It's been very popular here. Just in the morning when sometimes even before we open, sometimes people find their way in to the building, and we have to, tell them that it's not open yet. There are people who are very interested in using the building. At night, we want to, help them out, but there's only so much we can all do with the hours.
The other librarians specialize in free library and adult library. The teen library section isn't busy. Is that second person able to fill in where it is busy? Help out with the adult section, help out with reference, things like that.
Yeah, we already do that now. Right now, everybody on staff kind of works everywhere. But we really need this position to, it's always busy. It's kind of just always busy down there. So that doesn't really come up. And there's always a need for, someone to be doing something else.
You don't want me standing in front of a hot chocolate. 205.
So, Sam, in your spreadsheet of the budget, it doesn't list the trust funds materials, and like programming and things like that are all zero because they're paid for because they're not town supplied.
Right. So right now the Friends pay for about $10,000 to $12,000 just for our museum passes. And they also spend about $10,000 to $15,000 last year on programming for summer and winter reading and just miscellaneous other programming we have throughout the year. So the Friends have been paying for that. The trustees, now that we're kind of set with everything, they've been contributing also funds to for things like professional development. They provide $15,000 for additional funding for books. They provided about $5,000 to $7,000 for professional development. We had to get new computers because the computers we originally purchased for the library for the staff were purchased during the pandemic. And as you all know, it was hard to find computers that were actually any good. So it used to take me 30 minutes when I would turn on my computer in the morning just to be able to do anything with it. And so we purchased some new computers for the staff. And then Tom has been going around and he added some solid state drives to the patron computers. So the trustees paid for that so that the computers actually are operational when we need them to be. And so the trustees have agreed to provide up to $30,000 to $40,000 a year to cover extra things like programming. And that's why I took programming off of the votes, because it's already covered by the friends and the trustees.
So, I thank you for all of that. It would just be nice if in the narrative, you actually said how much the trustees and the friends were providing, because it makes it look like you're running the library on much less money than you really are, right? So that's why I was asking the question.
One other line I see that professional services is 0 to 3 of the 4 years under. Is that sustainable or is that,
So professional, we don't really have professional services except for professional development that we needed. So, and like I said, the trustees have agreed to cover that.
Have it, Sam? Thank you, Sam.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, Sam.
As a point of reference for, I just want to know, it's all good, Sid. Thank you. I know that in the past you have wanted proposed requests. Those are outlined on page 31 that was requested. And on page 32 is what we were able to fulfill. Okay. We have next up our town clerk. And for those of you with the book, it's on page 145.
Smith, when you want to start your meeting?
We're in session.
Yeah. One of the things excuse me, one of the things I should have mentioned is Ryan and Jim have given us a balanced budget. So if we hear anything that needs to be added to the budget, we need to come up with ways to cut something because we need to stay in balance. If you're making your list as we go along, and you're writing down something that says, yeah, this sounds good, try and figure out a way to pay for it also. Okay. No pressure, Diane.
No pressure whatsoever. Good evening, Diane Croy, Town Clerk. Thank you for having me. So this evening, we're talking about Town Clerk and elections, major accomplishments for basically the calendar year 24, fiscal year 2025. Census, 100% was sent out, 95% was returned. In the past, we've had 90%, sometimes less than that. We were pretty fortunate this last year to get 95%. We had to send out 3 different mailings to get to that 95%. And we actually were receiving census from last year within the last week. So people were still returning last year's census within the last week. People don't understand the importance of the census, but it's really key for people to be returning the census because we get monies from federal government, from the state government. Elections, 100% absentees were mailed out and mailed back in. Requests were sent out, including 4 elections, 2 primaries, 1 local and 1 general. So over 10,000 mail-ins were sent out to the residents. Over 4,000 for our general in November, about 2,500 for our 2 primaries, and about 3,500 for our main election that we had for our local election. For our PRRs, 100% were completed and on time, whether it was for the town clerk's office or others in the town. Introduction of our clickers and poll pads were key last year. Many people were really pleased with the clickers during our town meetings and couldn't believe how quickly we were able to get through questions last year. And our poll pads were really key during our election time. We were able to Not only during our town meeting, but during our elections, we were able to get people through in between 7 and 10 seconds, check people in. It's really quickly and easily, and people were really pleased. And another goal was the integrity of all elections always. As you all know, we had a turnover in employees last year, this last year. In June, Kim went to the assessor's office and we were able to bring in Andrew. We were able to snag him from Harvard. We had a little over 2 years over in Harvard, and he's been a pleasant surprise to have with us, and hopefully he'll work out. As you all know, I am running for re-election and looking for this to be my last year and trying to groom him into the position. Our department goals for 2026 is to continue training for the department, which is very key if we are looking down the road to groom him into the clerk's position. Continue to stay effective and efficient in all aspects for residents and voters. We're looking to finish binding all of the vitals, which we have grant money, which we receive from CPA funding. Upgrade of department technology, resources and services to better accommodate residents and voters. And introduced a new electronic permitting platform for dog licensing, reducing processing time for residents and staff, as well reduce the cost for seniors 70 and over. They now receive their dog licenses for free. Fiscal year 2026 clerk elections capital budget requests. We're looking for $22,800, which I introduced last year. It's for 4 machines, and they are actually the 4th generation. Last year, we talked about it and thought it would be the 3rd generation. It's now going to be the 4th generation. We're looking for 4. As you well know, the machines that we are currently using are now over 24 years old. We're not just looking to replace them for the sake of replacing them. It's due to the fact that parts are starting to become obsolete.
Excuse me, Diane, what is the availability of the equipment? Is it relatively readily available? If you buy it in July, you'll get it in August? Or?
Sure. So what we have to do is so first we have to vote on it in May.
Right.
Then we have to come back to the select board to get a vote from the select board to say that, yes, they approve the purchasing of it.
So if the select board don't hold you up.
If the select board do not hold us up, then I have to go to the state with the vote from both the town meeting and the select board,
Yep.
show them what we're looking to purchase. They have to give us the authorization to go out and purchase, and then we can do the purchase. LHS has them readily available, but it'll be about 6 months between everything that happens. So we're looking, so if we do it right after May, hopefully we'll have it within 6 months.
Any needs in the fall.
And is 4 enough, or will we need 5?
We'll be fine. Yeah, that'll give us, we don't think that we'll need to go to a 4th precinct right now, but so that'll give us 3 and a spare.
What is the population break that drives you to the fourth precinct?
12,000.
12?
And right now, we only have 7,000 voters. That'll
It's
be a while.
12,000 voters.
Voters.
Okay.
The next is a copy of the.
Okay. Great.
So the budget, right now, we're just looking for both Andrew and myself to move up, debt and, expenses are 12,300. If you were to look at what we're doing, we have, kept our professional services the same. Our office supplies went up by about $200. Our postage, we decreased by $2,000, and our dues and subscriptions, we decreased by $500. So the postage, I was a little bit concerned at first because under the postage, the census falls under that. We just did a check for this year's census, which was about $2,400. But in considering the different needs in different departments and what we can do. I can actually take postage out of elections for census because it does actually fall into that category as well, because we do use census information for elections. So I know that that extra $500, which will probably be the cost next year, out of elections. So I'm not as concerned as I initially was when we reduced it by $2,000. So the total cost for expenses, $12,300. Elections, $4,000. That is for the assistant town clerk overtime. So that is for our Saturday elections and all the overtime that is spent for our town meeting and our elections that we have, whether it's local or our state elections. So we have to put in that into our budget because he does get that overtime.
So you're planning for a fall election and a
Yes,
spring election?
yes, yep. Expenses, we went up on the expenses because we are looking at a fall town meeting and also the election. So we had to increase the town meeting and election data processing. So the extra election, I have to have that money's in there to provide for our machines to be processed for the data processing. And then the electronic services, we have the poll pads. We have 12 poll pads, and they are used for our town meetings and our elections. And they take care of all of the data processing that goes into all those poll pads, as well as taking care of to be sure that they're ready to go. So we send all that data information to LHS. They pull it all together. They send us the information and we're good to go. So they process all that.
So I did have one question on
Sure.
your expense.
Yep.
Is the police details. If
Yep.
I read in the narrative, you weren't holding in-person early voting for the town elections.
Correct.
Is that correct? So what do you need?
So we kept that figure there and in case we need it. If we keep going up and down, people are going to say, well, why are we this year and why are we next year? So we keep it level, then we give it back at the end of the cycle.
Okay.
And
So that's a line item if we really needed to cut, we
Yep.
could, because you're not likely to spend it.
that's correct. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So that full figure is 59,300. Projected 26 to 35-year operating needs looking forward with the replacement of the voting machines, replacing the voting booths, thanks to LELWD, new poll pads and clickers. The election division should be good.
So the light department gave you new booths?
Yes, so I had gone to the select board one meeting. They allowed me to go to them for a grant, which was enabled through the state. And so they are giving us $15,000 for.
Next. On the police details,
Yes.
are you still gonna need a detail for town meeting? You can still get
Yes.
detail for special fall town meeting.
Yes,
And the elections, right?
yes. So we have the election that's a 16-hour day. The two town meetings, we have 2 police officers for the duration of the 2 town meetings. So I can't cut it fully, but I could cut it significantly.
So you won't use them for the pre-voting?
We don't do pre-voting for our own elections. So we do it for our state elections and state primaries.
State, okay.
When we did
So
when
for the following
we
year.
did, so when we did voting for local election, if we got 50 people to come in to do the early voting, that was a high number. We got huge numbers in November. We had 1,000 people that actually early voted in person. for the November election. So it was worthwhile to have
Alright.
that.
Anything else for Diane?
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Michelle Liebert, Human Resources Director, and in your books, it's on page 140.
Good evening, Michelle Vibert, Human Resources Director. Thank you for having me tonight. I'll just run through a couple of accomplishments that we have had over the last calendar year. One of the biggest ones is a lot of our departments, as you just heard, have been asking for training and development, and our professional development line item allows other departments to reap the benefits of that. So we have helped many departments with supervisory training, seminars, conferences, really attending anything related to their field of work. We've had employees attend procurement trainings and other things as well. We've streamlined a lot of processes. A lot of our job is to help all other departments, and three of the biggest pieces of that is the hiring, pre-employment, and recruitment process. A lot of what we do really needs to be quick and efficient on this end, because people without staff, that work falls to somebody else in their department. And we always need to be able to mitigate for that. So we have created forms. A lot of what we've done is create systems and forms to put in place for these departments, so it makes their process more efficient. It allows them to know where we're at in the process, which can be lengthy for some positions. Our staff engagement committee, which is made up of 7 of our non-union employees, really works on employee recognition and engagement. And as you know, some of you may know, this has come up over the last several years on really making Littleton the best place to work. And what does that is the environment that goes from recognition to engagement to a lot of the things that sometimes we don't always recognize ourselves. So we've worked with the committee to put events in place. We've established over the last year events such as the ice cream social. We had a truck that at their leisure, the staff would come out, stop for 5 minutes, get an ice cream of their choice, and then go back to work. We've had crafts for Flag Day. We had popsicles in the break room. They could again go at their leisure and get a popsicle. We had a Halloween. We did costume contest. We did a decorate a turkey contest. They were to decorate their door with a turkey. And really we've noticed people are really getting involved, which is a change over the last several years. One of the biggest sides of employee recognition, which we are touching on now, we are planning to do an annual recognition event, which is more the side of managers recognizing their employees, other staff recognizing other staff, really getting the managers involved in doing that bulk of the thank yous. It could go from, somebody working above and beyond to just a thank you with helping me on that. And we don't do enough of that. So we're trying to make an actual annual event to recognize all of our employees townwide. The Personnel Advisory Committee, as you know, they have a different scope of work in working with HR and evaluating job descriptions that come up over the year. Maybe staff feels that their job description doesn't capture what they've done. Maybe it's changed because of a new task or a function that they've taken on. So the Personnel Advisory Committee reviewed roughly 20 job descriptions. That doesn't mean they've all changed, but it takes time and a lot of effort to go through each job description with the department, with the employee, and with the manager, and then bring it back to the Personnel Advisory Committee for their recommendation on if any changes should be made. We've started to review, I put this as an accomplishment because policies and procedures, as you know, can always change and they can sometimes be revised to make them, to improve them. So recently we worked on the personnel bylaw and the employee handbook. These two books are our manuals. It drives everything we do in the HR department and helps us enforce everything we do from procedures to policies. So these two books are very important. And we need to get them basically back to a structure where we can maintain them going forward. So phase one is to collectively bring the personnel bylaw to town meeting this year with any changes that we see that need to be made immediately, and then the employee handbook as well, and getting it back to that book that was created in 2021. Open enrollment process development. We've done a lot of work on this. This is our tool for how everyone and all of our employees sign up or decline benefits. So we have utilized our employee self-service portal through Munis, and now it is automated instead of using paper, which saves a lot of time. There's still a lot more we could be doing. We have made a PowerPoint presentation with instructions, but we really need maybe informational videos on how to quickly, people like convenience, so it's how to quickly manage that process and getting them to really jump in and do it and sign on. We also created an administrative assistant position, and we're working on evaluating the usage of part-time hours, which I will go into more detail a little bit later. And overall in the entire department, this is more of ongoing, but we've already done a lot. So I put it under accomplishments, but we're working on establishing systems for information and processes. A lot of our processes overlap with the treasurer's office, especially when it comes to payroll. And so we have successfully established where those overlapping tasks make sense to live in which department, and also who's responsible for them. This helps streamline a lot of questions we were getting from employees on who to go to for what, and really the processes itself when it came to needing to get through those. And overall, we've enhanced communications to all departments. So I've been working diligently with some department heads on meeting with them. Unfortunately, you can't meet on one person. You can't meet with everybody individually. But I've really been looking at how to get information out to departments that they need to know. So Jim and Ryan have been successful in establishing department head meetings again, which has been helpful. I try to utilize that time to really give out any information that may be relevant to other departments that they need to be aware of. And goals for fiscal year 2026. Again, you heard earlier that departments are looking for training and development opportunities. So this goes beyond just the HR department. We do have the ability to assist other departments with funding for these opportunities. A lot of what's been coming up recently is we have a lot of newer, younger managers, a lot of supervisory training, leadership training, management training. That has come up a lot. But really, we need to get the word out there that this is available to all departments so they utilize it more. Exploring creative options for recruitment and retention through policy development. We have done a lot with recruitment over the last year, but more so we need to focus on retention now with our current employees. There's a lot of policies in our employee handbook, for example, that are outdated that could be updated, that we've heard from employees asking for those requests. So we'll be looking at those over the next year. Develop and implement employee engagement programs, events, and recognition. As I mentioned before, we have established a lot, which employees are happy with, but there's still more to do. We could still be improving, hearing requests from employees about what they're looking for and what they want to see from us as the staff engagement committee. And again, we're working on that annual recognition event. Research, evaluate benefits offered, and mitigate for insurance costs. This is the not so nice topic I get to talk about today, but as we all know, insurance costs are rising. It's not stopping in the near future. It's due to weight loss drugs, increased usage of those drugs. That's a big piece of this. We're working with Maya, who is our insurance provider, and our insurance advisory committee to really evaluate ways we can mitigate for that. There's a few options which I'll touch on in a little bit. Promote wellness incentives that support mental and physical health. Just because somebody doesn't say something that's bothering them, doesn't mean nothing is bothering them. And we really have to look at what we're doing for our employees and our staff on mental health and physical health. There's a lot that we could be sending out that our wellness committee offers through Maya. We have an employee assistance program through Maya that we can utilize. Really need to promote those to employees and let them know that they're there for them. Hearing it when they're hired, it's just not enough. So we want to make sure we're supporting them. Conduct a classification and compensation study for non-union positions. Roughly, I think this is done every 3 years. So we are in the midst of that currently. We are in the infancy stages, which is gathering all the positions that would be reviewed and gathering a scope of work. Comprehensive review of policies and procedures. This is what I touched on before. Phase 1 is really establishing the personnel bylaw and the employee handbook back to make sure those are the correct versions and they're posted in the correct places. And phase 2 would be really taking anything HR has seen or any other employee has recognized as maybe it could be improved as a policy or procedure, and evaluating which ones need to be changed, which ones can be changed, what makes sense for our organization. And establishing an assistant human resources director position.
Before you move on, can I ask
Yeah.
a question about the training and development?
Sure.
How do you decide which ones come out of the HR budget versus the department's budget?
So typically what I do is ask the department if their budget has any funds in it currently. And then we evaluate what, for example, we had an Excel training request. But is there somebody in-house that could run that before we get somebody from the outside? We evaluate those two things first. And then if there's any leftover that they can't cover in the department and it's related to their field, we typically do cover it.
So, excuse me, so to follow up on that, how much, there are 2 line items here,
Mhm.
education and professional development for 20 grand and tuition reimbursement for 20 grand. How much of that have you used or committed so far this year, ballpark? I mean, is it,
Roughly it's about $6,000.
I'm sorry,
Roughly it's about $6,000.
okay,
And so what the tuition was really created for was to help employees with college courses. We really need to create a policy for that in order to utilize that.
okay, so you've committed about 6,000 of the, one of the 20,000 or 6,000 of the 40,000?
One of the 20,000.
So there's 40,000 of some kind of training. How much have you committed for those 2 buckets?
6,000.
6,000
Yes.
total, okay.
Correct.
Okay,
If I may, Mr. Vice Chairman and members of the committee and the select board. So this is really, as you heard, as you saw, all the accomplishments and the goals that Michelle has undertaken, and with a department of 2. This is really something that I had encouraged her in terms of the tuition reimbursement. There was with the outreach efforts that Michelle was doing, there weren't a lot of people knocking on the door for the tuition reimbursement. But there will be a more concentrated effort, and now that there is incentive for people to go to community college, and then but our drive will be going to pursuing bachelor's
that's
degrees.
fine, yep.
All right, thank you.
Before you skip ahead, Michelle, common class study, so we got funding for that back in May.
Mhm.
Where does that stand?
So it's in the infancy stages right now. So I'm working with the personnel advisory committee to bring the scope of work we received from one vendor back to them. So they can evaluate the positions that we are researching, and then the scope of work with it. So their meeting is next week.
So no price tag.
Not yet. So Ryan, you can skip the next 3 slides. So this is just capital. HR department doesn't really have any capital to discuss. So. So department operating budget request highlights. We currently have a 19-hour administrative assistant position in our budget, which is currently funded at $25,519.01. What we're asking is that we create an assistant human resources director position to replace that 19-hour position. So the delta that we are asking for is $54,451.39. With that, I just want to go into the need for the assistant director position. So last year I had ended the budget presentation with the need to evaluate the hours and scope of work of the administrative assistant to make sure that it fulfilled the needs of the department and the organization. We are one of a few departments that service all departments. We not only have all the employees, but we have many vendors, retirees, and former employees that we need to service. We need to ensure and sustain operations. At any time, any personnel matter could arise with no warning. Some matters can be resolved quickly, while others can't. And HR's responsibility has a lot to do with legal matters. It could be safety concerns, and we need to spend time speaking with all parties involved. We need to be able to respond quickly to a lot of questions that come through the department, a lot of the payroll management, not on the paying side of the employee, but the management in the system of entering the employee into the system, adding their deductions to the employee screens, job salary maintenance, which is how much you're being paid, what you're being paid. A lot of that is in the HR office, overlapping with the treasurer's office. These are time-sensitive questions when payroll is on deadlines that it needs to be processed by. While any policy we have in the HR department can't predict every scenario, a lot of these questions and interpretations can have impacts, and we need to make sure that we can answer them quickly. Another big factor is the labor market has changed, and while we have had a lot of employees staying, it's been a lot of administrative work, and we need to be more strategic where we're posting, when we're posting, how we're posting these positions. So the role of the assistant HR director has become increasingly critical in light of these demands. The town needs an assistant director to provide continuity of operations when the human resources director is involved in critical matters or in their absence. Creating such a role will also provide for succession planning in a major department that services every department in the town of Littleton. And so again, we have currently funded roughly $25,000 and we're looking for an additional $54,000.
So just to be clear, Michelle, you were approved for the 19-hour last year. You did not fill it,
Correct.
and now you're looking to increase it to a full-timer.
Correct.
add
So with everything I just explained, we realized that the 19 hours is not enough. And the level of service that an administrative assistant could provide from what's needed in the department and the organization is a higher level of service that's needed. It's on a management level.
I've got a couple of questions. I mean, since it was going from 19 hours to 40, there'd also be all the benefits. So how much would that account for? How much would that be?
I think what they used in the book was around 22,000 for health insurance.
Okay, so it's really not a 54, it's 76,000. And
Oh, yeah, and the other thing is, it's in the book, is it basically an $80,000 person? 79,000 and
Correct.
change. But they're only asking for 54, so you're only adding them for 7 or 8 months.
No, it's 54 because they already had the,
Replacing the part-time position, a 19-hour position. They never filled it. So that's in their budget from last year.
So
So in
the
the,
$80,000 person is not in this.
so in the 97,000 from last year,
Yeah,
includes a 19-hour person that is gonna fill.
right.
They're adding 54 to that number to make a full-time $80,000.
So they're running that difference like this year.
Yes.
Okay. So what is the $40,000 reserve fund wages for?
So that was created to cover any wages
I'm
that,
sorry, I can't.
that was created to cover any wages that if an employee retired and they had vacation on the books, for example, and the department didn't have that budgeted for.
It's down the expense line from last year.
Why was it moved from expenses to wages?
It wasn't, obviously wasn't spent last year. What is it being spent on this year?
So it is moving. So I requested that it move to the finance director and the finance team. When you're covering wages and town meeting votes it as wages, it should be under a wages line, not an expense line.
So I guess I have to. I feel obligated to push back a little bit about this, since the position wasn't in place this year. It's really asking for a new full FTE. And I noticed in the previous department, the library, we pushed back hard on 35 to 37 and a half, and so here we're, of, a full FTE. I'm just, as we've looked at the next, I'm getting to a point. I know I haven't had a point yet, but I'm getting to a point. Sorry. It just,
Okay. Work in progress.
as we've looked at the next couple of years, we've talked about, compounding expenses, especially personnel. And I'm just, sitting on FinCom, and I think our job has to be to largely push back. It would be a pretty heavy lift to ask for another FTE.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But one of the things when I came aboard a little over a year ago is evaluating and observing the various departments. One of the ones that there was concern over was HR. I mean, as you all are very, very aware of, that the complications and the HR world, the employment world is ever changing, and it's getting more complicated, whether it be through legal means, whether it be through policy means, anything like that. And here you had two people really, and one individual that had experience, another person who was a generalist who did not have any experience. I mean, you're basically drinking out of a fire hose, and you are probably one of the most, as Michelle had pointed out, deals with every single department, including the school department. And it was a lot, and it was a lot to a point of concern to me for legally and for exposure for the town. So it was me that said, let's hold off on the 19-hour. That's great. Let's reevaluate it a little longer. We have brought in an outside professional through the Collins Center of an expertise in HR, and has confirmed my thoughts exactly to the level of working with Michelle, working with Brianna, and evolving and making progressive changes on how the department operates. And it absolutely requires another full-time person with experience.
Yeah, I guess that's it. Like that I'd love to say yes to everything, but it's just in these times, it's sort of obligated to, if.
Brian, we can't afford not to.
Yeah.
Because it's but put up to a point of concern. And I would acquiesce, and I completely understand where you're coming from, 100%. But yes, we did, and I did give Sam, the opportunity if you could have one or the other, and he absolutely, without absolutely selected that. Well, HR doesn't have that luxury.
I can tell you, Ryan, from
Thank you, sir.
being in charge of HR prior to Michelle coming with being, they need help with that. They really do. The two people can't handle the level of service that we need for the employees, you know. And if something gets pushed through the cracks and missed, it costs money.
Okay, okay. I'm happy to listen to both of you. It's just that my starting point for any new FTE has always got to be, no, now tell me why.
So absolutely,
just-
that's respectful.
It's absolutely no, it's just, that's what I have to.
And you know, that's how I look at things.
Yeah.
It's a no upfront and
I know, I
talk
talk,
me into it.
the irony that
This was an easy
the-
talk.
The irony that you're telling me you want another employee, let's note the date and time. Okay,
Do you have else? So we talked about the, sorry, Ryan, if you just go back one. We talked about the personnel reserve fund moving, and the last line item is we have looked at all our expense line items. The only one changing is advertising. It has decreased by $1,000. We're more cognizant of where we're posting, what we're posting, and where we really need to get those specialized positions. And really on this slide, meeting with the town administrator and the finance team, there has been no recommended changes from what was presented. And last but not least, operating needs projecting out 5 years. So we currently, again, we're looking at systems, we're looking at everything we service other employees on other departments. One of our biggest services is applicants, onboarding, how we conduct that process. Our current software does have this ability. It would be an additional cost. I have not even touched on evaluating it yet, but it does need to be reviewed and evaluated. It could streamline a lot of processes that affect everyone. Increasing security, office structure, and space. We deal with a lot of confidential information, whether it's speaking with someone in person and they're telling us about medical issues they're having, they want to retire. Anything they do, any paper that's left out on your desk, we really need to be mindful of how we utilize our space and how we're locking things up or even turning our computers off. Digitizing records. A lot of our records are on paper, if not all of them. It improves time and efficiency when producing requests from employees, former employees, instead of sifting through a 5-inch thick personnel file. So we're looking at doing that. And developing strategies to mitigate for insurance increases. I feel this will never go away, unfortunately. I touched on this earlier. We floated the idea of an opt-out program before. There's different ideas that we really need to work with the Insurance Advisory Committee and the employees to help mitigate for these costs. Over the last 3 years, we've seen a significant increase in utilization in our plans. How we can mitigate for those claims that they're reviewing and those costs.
So Michelle, just to be clear in this, you're not envisioning over the next 5 years, you're gonna want to bring back that human resources admin assistant.
I do not envision that right now.
So you envision that in 3 years, you still have a department of 3
Correct.
or 5 years with us. I did have one question in the, not so much in the budget, but in the narrative.
Mhm.
There's it says there's 800-ish employees, and there's basically 160 new hires a year between the different. That's an incredible turnover if you, depending on how you look at it. So how do we break that out? Is that like seasonal hires that we're rehiring and?
That's anything between town, school, seasonal, that's everybody.
So the 820 includes seasonal. It would be good to have it broke out between full, part-time, seasonal. So I mean, right now it looks like we have a turnover of 30%.
So as of today, we have 356 full-time benefit eligible employees. Excuse me, 450. We have 272 part-time non-benefits eligible employees. That includes everyone in the senior tax work-off program and veterans tax program. They still have to do the onboarding packet, get entered into the system because it's all run through payroll.
And that includes the senior work off.
Correct.
and all that.
Yep.
So you get a
Yep. And then you have 83 temporary and seasonal employees as well.
Okay, so a lot of those hires are, I mean, 158 hires seems like a lot in a given year. So we must be, every year we're considering hiring the senior workers again.
You could, so
I'm just trying to figure out, that's a really large number to be hiring every year.
the what for the schools? I don't have that number.
Just the term.
But if you're hiring 100, like in FY 24, it says we had 158 new hires out of 823 employees. That's a huge percentage, right?
The more interesting number might be the number of full-time benefit eligible people who turned over.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's an easy number, but I think that's the more interesting number.
You want to get the number that excludes the senior workers and things like that are more transient workers,
Right.
for lack of a better term, but
So all I can say is that the school department does have a huge factor in a lot of our operations. It's just like the budget, it's 2/3 of our operation. And what happens is they're hiring week to week to week, and it's not because people are necessarily leaving, it's because they're filling or creating new positions to cover their staff. If someone's sick, they need to cover that class. They need to make sure they have subs, long-term subs, short-term subs. So there's a lot of hiring that goes on for the school department.
it'd just be good to figure out, this makes it look like we have really poor retention.
Thanks.
No, I'm.
Hence the employee recognition.
Let's say hiring is fluid. Let's say that.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else from Michelle?
Thank you, everyone.
Next, we have LCTV, Macquarie, and that's on page 307 in your budget book. 307.
Evening. Last year, the calendar year, some major accomplishments. We have a new podcast studio that was completed or set, I guess you could say, in our studio. That was built and designed by a Eagle Scout person, Thomas Glorioso. And so he's the one who came up with the idea and pitched the idea to us. And he got a lot of businesses in town to donate lumber and things like that for the actual construction. We paid for the equipment part of it, but anyway, that's up and running.
So you needed a new park studio for Jim to run his podcast.
Karen.
Is
Karen.
Yes, they taped their post.
I'm just, I'm Ed McMahon. She's Johnny.
Friday afternoon late, they did their first episode, and it has 185 views so far. So that's great since Friday. We completed our archiving project, which was the digitization of CDs and DVDs and old VHS tapes and anything that we had lying around the studio that was we felt necessary to archive and for historical purposes. We also increased our VOD government meetings from 11 regular boards and committees per month. And now we have 24 monthly meetings that we have our hands involved in, whether we edit and trim and post-production work, or we actually, like we do tonight, have the cameras and the crew that man them live. We hired a 19-hour
production coordinator for Foxborough, covering a lot of the Foxborough needs over there. And that was through the IMA. Built it into the cost of the IMA with them. And then we provided technical assistance. I was trying to figure out if we've done something with every single department. And I think we have, whether we're helping them promote an event or cover an event or take pictures or assisting with setting up projectors and TVs and things, you know.
Mark, on the archiving, is there any talk of going back and I assume you had old archived meetings. Is there any effort to associate those with the meeting on the website so that you can go back rather than just searching YouTube for something?
Yeah, no, I don't think there's talk about that, unless we get a senior tax write-off person to be able to link those two things up. But you probably do notice that going forward, Nancy does link the video portion of the meeting to the minutes online. So those two are merged. We also, we started, at least with the select board meetings, we index them. So if you go to YouTube and you want to find a specific topic, you look over the side and it has everything out, you know, with an index, like a timestamp. So you can go click on that and it'll take you right to that part of the meeting. You don't have to, you know, skim through the meeting, which is kind of cool. It does take time though. So that's why we only do the select board meetings right now. For the fiscal year 2026 budget updates, we'd like to, our goals, the department goals, we want to launch the LCTV Spotify channel, which we actually did. We launched it last week, so we've already met that goal. But if you go to Spotify and you type in Littleton Community Television, you'll see our channel come up there and you'll see all the different programs that we've uploaded so far. There's only 5 of them, but we hope as more people utilize the podcast, we'll get more up there. Complete and the installation and training for the new senior center remote studio. We have equipment and a studio similar to what we have here going over in the new senior center. And then the third goal, I guess, would be to explore alternative means of funding, which I can get to in a minute when we talk about our 5-year plan. But any questions so far? So for the fiscal year 2026 budget update, no capital requests. I did put that we were looking to replace the LCTV van and with possibly an excess Littleton Police Department vehicle, something like a Bronco or whatever they use, the SUV type. We don't need a full production van like we have now, the Marshmallow, which we call it up there. Because we initially got that because we thought we might build a studio in the back of it. But due to security reasons and the temperatures in New England, we decided not to build a studio into it. So it's basically just used to transport equipment. And so we felt maybe with if the police department were getting rid of one of their vans, they might want to donate it down to us. We don't put a lot of mileage on it, which basically go to the schools and back to our studio. There were no revised requests or capital revised capital budget requests. And then the next one is the projected 5-year capital plan. We had a pretty comprehensive one about 3 years ago. We've really trimmed that down. The only thing that we could possibly see doing would be to replace our iMac editing machines. 3 of them
costs about 24,000 to do that. Mostly because after a certain while, operating systems don't upgrade anymore. You can't get the latest without getting a new computer, and that's probably what we'll run into within the next 3 years or so, but. And then this is a typo, but replace LCTV with excess LPD inventory. That should be the van, not LCTV.
For clarification, if we do that, is that effectively the police budget and that they're not getting a trade-in?
It could, yeah, it could.
Let's see, fiscal year 2026 budget update. The operating expenses minus the wages remain the same as FY 25. The wages will decrease with the retirement of our video production supervisor. That would be Kirby Dolak, retiring at the end of the year. June 30th is his last day. So our plan is to promote from within, but we won't replace the 19-hour position. So there's a savings there from both where the promotion lands on the grid and with the not replacing the 19-hour position. And then
Right, so the new one, so I think what the retirement came out late, so after, so what this is something that's been just tweaked recently, so yeah, I think Kirby announced retirement after the budget went out. So yes, they don't match.
Yeah, it's 2 weeks ago is when we found that. Which is still plenty of time to prepare, which was nice too. I'm gonna miss him though. And then for the fiscal year 2026, let's see, LCTV, there was no TA revised operating budget adjustments. So those.
Oh, actually, yeah, so with Kirby's.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just meant
You
from.
might want to just look at the screen, Mark. That's just.
Well, there you go. Thank you. I didn't know that was updated.
Sure.
So that's the savings. The 49,000 is the savings of Kirby's, the difference in his wage, lane and step, and also the part-time person. Our 5-year operating needs, again, just to say that cable revenues in Boxborough, the IMA revenues are anticipated to not provide sufficient funding to cover all the LCTV expenses at the current levels. So hence one of the goals this year is to look at alternative means of funding or resources to continue to operate at the current level. We're a little different in that we're a town department. You know, we can't really look at other towns, what they do to fundraise because they're nonprofit organizations. So I guess we'd have to do something similar if we were going to fundraise by starting a nonprofit arm of LCTV, like the Friends of the Library do, or the Friends of COA do. But anyway, we're looking at different options and different scenarios for that. By my estimates, it seems like we'll be okay to be fully funded this year and possibly next year. But the year after that is probably when we'll run out of money in our kitty, our piggy bank, which we've been drawing from for the past few years. Generally, well, I have been for since 2020, letting the finance committee and the select board know that, you know, at the time I was hoping that the town would take on a portion of that expense. Whether it be, at the time I had said just the benefits portion. If the town picked that up, we should be able to operate pretty much self-funding for 10 years. But since 2020, each budget cycle, it's been it's told to me it's been a rough year. We're gonna have to wait. And then we've also had turnover in administrations that, so not every, all that information was not passed down from generation to generation of administrators. But we're working on, coming up with a plan and a solution, whether it be through alternative funding methods, or as I was hoping that perhaps the town would take over a portion of our budget. Now, what I did find out over the summer, and I don't think anybody knew this, or if they did, it wasn't made aware to me anyway. You can't just pay for the benefits portion of our budget. It has to be wages and benefits. You can't separate them out. If the town was going to be subsidized, they'd have to subsidize both wages and benefits, not one or the other. Apparently this is the law. So that was kind of news to me. I think it was news to our financial people too at the time. But anyway, that's the way it is. And any questions?
Yes, in the out years, the 28, 29 time frame, that you looked at relocating to someplace else?
And the purpose of that would be what would be the purpose of that?
Either that, or you can pay for the whole Shattuck Street building when town hall moves out.
Oh, I see.
Well,
There has been,
rapidly emptying the building,
yeah.
so.
Honestly, we've looked at some things. There was talk about us moving into the Tuttle House at one time. But really, there hasn't been a lot of movement in that end of things. That's kind of far down the road that we haven't really looked at that.
It's the cliff is coming closer, so I think you need to at least begin to start thinking about someplace for you to be.
Yeah. Well, if we wanted to downsize, what I would propose would be that if they did build a new town hall on the site at 550 King Street, that they would build a studio into it, because it makes more sense for us to be part of the community of town hall. We're more in the pulse of things. Being in the Tuttle House is a little isolated. I know it's still on the same campus, so to speak, but you don't get the same vibe as you do when you're in the building with the fellow staff people. So, and if we downsized at that time, that would be okay with us. We don't really need all the space that comes with the gym that we inherited, but we're happy to have it. But
Sure.
we could get by with a smaller footprint.
Just something that should be on your radar screen, that's all.
It's on the radar screen, just haven't got to the point where people have discussed all those plans with me yet.
Out of the money that you get from Comcast and Verizon has to be spent on equipment. Is that true?
No.
No?
No, it's just, we can spend it on however we want.
However,
Okay. So a point of clarification on the benefits. If we were to pay Kirby's salary, for example, we'd pay his benefits, but since we're not paying Kirby's salary, we can't pay Kirby's benefits. It's not a per department, it's on a per individual basis.
Correct. Yes, you could pay for just one person's salary and benefits.
Make a skin and cap, yeah, absolutely.
So we can pick who we like in the department the best.
Yes. That's how it would be
Who
seen.
gets the best swag?
that's the important thing.
That's how it would be viewed.
We can take up Kirby's salary once he leaves.
Yeah.
Next year, we'll pick them up next year.
Right.
One thing,
That's a good plan.
I'm always thinking.
I just want to say, I like that you continue to expand the number of boards and committees that you cover. It's always great to see that. Do you have like the next couples that are on your list, notwithstanding all the constraints that might be on, I mean, like light and water?
That's one of the few holdouts, I think. I don't say holdout, meaning they refuse to do it. This one that we haven't, got around to making those arrangements yet. But you'll notice a lot of newbies up there, the Sustainability Committee and the Clean Lakes Committee and, you know, we did the housing, what was it, the Housing Authority the other day. Thanks to, Matthew Nordhaus,
And
but
it's great work. It's good to see.
yeah, it's good. I think it's good. People can, to watch these things, you know, I'm always surprised at the number of views that these shows get. You know, you wouldn't think people would be interested in the Bicycle Pedestrian Committee, but they are. So it's good to have it out there.
So, and the funds coming in from Comcast and Verizon, so you're showing a $10,000 decrease in each. And then that's down from your 24 actuals. What's the run rate so far in 25? With those, are we ahead of?
It's so hard to figure out how they send the money because they don't break it down for me in real detail. I just get a check. And one quarter, it'll be up $500-600. The next quarter, it'll be down $800, and then it'll go up and it'll go down. You know, it depends almost if there's an event like the Olympics and people, you know, sign up for cable again. So it's up and down. But if you were to graph it out, you'd see that even though it jumps up and down, it has been a decline. And then mostly it hasn't been a sharp decline because the cable companies keep raising people's rates. So even though our subscriber numbers are way down, the number of people actually get cable anymore, we haven't seen a significant drop because of the, you know, raising of rates. You know, I will say that most of our expenses come in, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you look at it, in wages and benefits. You know, the benefits really went up a lot last number of years, and it hurt us a lot. So.
There was a discussion, it was thought that with all the streaming services or anything like that, that so many companies are embracing, and Verizon and whatnot, that maybe that would be a potential another funding source. So having worked with the Commissioner of Telecommunications and Cable, my last position, they called her and not a scintilla of a thought of that whatsoever, because they're unregulated streaming services. They have no authority over them, so they can't. So that's not any type of an additional funding source moving forward.
Is there any talk of using like the senior work-off volunteer workers or whatever we want to call them to help cover meetings or other?
Not to cover meetings, but we have utilized senior work off people in our studio. We had a woman who was editing for number of years. She edited most of our shows. So, but not for coverage of meetings. The coverage of meetings is kind of minimal as far as expense goes. It's just you know, it's not that expensive of a line item, really.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Next, we have the assessor's office, and that's on page 123.
Good evening, Kathy Miller, Chief Assessor. So to go over some of the accomplishments from last year, the main one was training and education of the assistant assessor in the field lister position. Hannah is new. She was the field lister. She is the current assistant assessor, and she took that position as of May. And so we're trying to get her on board, get her all the training she needs to get her designation. And then Kim, as Diane mentioned earlier, came from the clerk's office, and she is currently our field lister, and we're trying to get her up and running. We hired a summer intern to meet our inspection quota. Fiscal year 26 is our certification year, and part of the certification is that every property in town has to be inspected. And to meet that, we hired a college intern who came in and got us up to our quota. So we have met that. So every house and commercial industrial property in Littleton has been inspected at least once in the past 10 years. The only thing we're a little bit behind on is exempt properties. And that's like the churches and the schools in the town, and we're going to try to hit those this spring. We initiated the purchase of Nearmap to assist in hard-to-list properties. This is helping us for properties that are on private ways, have no trespassing, and vacant properties so that we can see if there's any outbuildings in them. We also removed and reclassified all land factors. Land factors, for those who don't know, is some of our land, we had factors on them ranging from 5 to 10%. If they were near a railroad, if they had traffic, they were a private way. And one of the DOR directives is to try to get rid of those factors. The department goals mainly is the successful and timely 2026 certification, work with Patriot on commercial land values, standardized factors on building values. So we removed all the land values last year. Now we have to look at the building values. Some of the
Excuse me, what is the issue with Patriot?
no issue with Patriot. Previously, we would put factors on land and buildings. Just for buildings, we'd put if they were oversized, the layout was funky, new construction, and we would put anywhere between 5 and 10% on that. And we did the same with land. DOR every year has directives, and one of them was that they don't like seeing too many factors. They should be on properties that really need them, but the rest of them should be done through the market analysis. You should be looking at all the roads, all the dead end roads, all the private ways, and using the market data to adjust those values, not by putting random 5 and 10% factors that you can't really monitor.
I think Patriot is, could you describe what Patriot is?
Patriot is our Canvas system, and that's what we use to enter.
It's not the
It's
company.
not the company. That's
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah.
my mistake. I apologize.
No, CAMA is the system. That's where we enter. Every house in town has its own property record card. Patriot is the software where we enter the
That's
sketch.
fine.
We enter all the information. So we want to finish our municipal land review. One of the things that we did last year is we looked at all the town-owned land and we started combining some of them. We did the Conservation Commission last year, and now we're looking at the rest of them. And the reason this has benefit is because a lot of times we're looking for fields for park and rec. We might be looking for where we put affordable housing. But right now, a lot of the land is broken up into small sections as we purchase them. They might be 0.2, 0.4, but by combining them, you can kind of look at them easier and find properties that we might be able to do something with. We're completing a process manual for all procedures performed by the assessing department. We just started that last year, but it's not finished. And that ranges from every procedure from how to list a house to how to do an abatement, motor vehicle abatements, how to do a butters list. It's every procedure because we've had such a turnover in the past couple of years. And then continue education for the assistant assessor in the field listing position.
So quick question on the municipal land, as we're reviewing them, are we tagging them better? Like if I go to the GIS system, I can see what land is controlled by the Conservation Commission, but I can't see the land controlled by the select board, for example, or, the school. It's hard to find land that by department, let's say. Are we tagging them better or?
So I have a master list and we haven't done what you just suggested, but I can put that out there. It'd be easy enough to do a layer based on that.
Thank you.
So I have no capital budget requests. So as far as the budget update, step increases for the staff. We were level funded for expenses. And this is because we went to fall town meeting and received $25,000 towards certification services.
So in the budget, it actually shows the assistant wages going down. Is that just because we hired someone at a lower step?
Yes, exactly. So the only thing that I have as far as projecting for the next 5 years is upgrading Patriot to the current revision. We are on the lowest version of Patriot that they have. They are supporting it. They keep saying that in the next couple of years, they're going to stop supporting it, although they've said that for several years now. The benefit of upgrading it is it can tie into view permit. Right now, we're manually entering all our permits. When you upgrade, there's an instant connection with the current version, so we wouldn't be having to enter building permits. And all the previous years are static, so they would be they'd be current. I could go look at it. Right now, if I need to look at a property record card from 2022, I have to log in to an old static database. This one, they would be all concurrent. I can go into any year I need to go.
What's the ballpark cost per upgrade?
I don't even have a ballpark because I've been hoping to put this off, but that is one of the things. This is a certification year, so I knew I didn't want to do it for 2026, but I was going to start investigating that cost this year.
Yeah, because once you're at the tail end of support, it's off.
Yeah.
Yeah, gotcha.
And this is
Really
this would be a one-time upgrade cost mainly, not
That's correct.
so it is more of a capital than an operational in that respect.
In ballpark, is it a $50,000 upgrade or a $200,000 upgrade?
We've had the same operating one for the past 11 years I've been here, and I honestly don't even have a ballpark.
Okay.
So it's a recertification year, so if you just explain to everybody what that means, because that's going to be a lot more time and effort for your
Yeah.
Yeah.
So every 5 years is a certification year for the assessor's office for our assessments, and it's more strict. DOR is coming out to visit Littleton, I believe, February, it's the 11th. So she'll start by coming out and she'll do a quality study where she'll ask me for abatements. She'll ask me for some property record cards. And then she'll take those property record cards, drive out to the field, make sure that we're getting all the information that we should be going when we're out in the field. She'll look for things like, she'll look at our income and expenses forms. So we have to send those out every year to all the businesses so that we get what we're getting for rents for all our businesses to use that for the income approach of value. So she'll look to make sure that we're mailing those out, that we're getting a good amount back. She just looks at all our processes, our chapter lands. She'll go through our chapter land folders, make sure that every property that's in chapter land has a lien that's been filed at the Registry of Deeds. So it's just a process. So every year they don't do that, but every 5 years they come in, and a lot of the reporting is much more strict. It's done by quartiles and residuals and looking at land, and she'll do the sales and she'll put everything in a macro, and she'll tell me what she thinks. And that's where I get all my directives for the next 5 years, is based on this quality study. She'll say things like one of the things from last year was my condos. Every single condo development should have had an index so that they could sort by the condo indexes. She wanted our neighborhoods updated. So previously our neighborhoods were 1 through 10, but the neighborhoods didn't really represent anything. So now we have like neighborhood 1 is waterfront, neighborhood 2 is water view, neighborhood 3 is cluster development, and neighborhood 4 is throughways. And so now all my neighborhoods have some, so when I'm analyzing my sales, you can kind of see how high traffic on Great Road or King Street or dead end roads or the different factors of land and neighborhoods affect sales. So she'll be looking at all of that. So it's just much more strict. I don't have to do all of it. Every year that I go for a regular certification to get my values certified, it's a lot less.
Okay,
Thank you.
That's it. All right. Thank you.
Treasurer collectors on
What, say,
accounting.
how are you?
Yes,
I'll go.
page
Robert, why don't you go and then I'll find it.
All right. Thanks.
127.
Okay. Robin Healy, Treasurer Collector. Major accomplishments for this calendar year is we maintained our AAA bond rating. Thanks to the strong fiscal policies that we have that and the contributions to stabilization accounts that we have. I think that really helped with that. We worked with the finance team to set the tax rate. We earned 1.5 in investment income, which is most interest, treasurer's interest. The budgeted amount in that for 24 and 25 is 250,000. So that's a good generator of free cash. And if you compare that to the investment income we had in FY23 was just over 774,000. So we definitely had a good year of, we are active in transferring money to accounts that earn higher interest. We transfer 3 times a week and we're always trying to seek out higher rates through all the banks that we're using. We collected 145,000 just over in tax lien revenue and removed 7 properties from tax title this year. I can say in FY25, we're just about at 8. We got 2 payments left and we'll have 8 in tax out of that title this year. Our goals for this year is to continue cross-training for all our staff. We're always trying to make sure everybody knows what everybody else is doing. To continue process improvement and maximize accuracy and efficiency. We are already starting this year in looking into Tyler cashiering to see what we need to train. So we have a demo coming up next month. We went and saw it in North Reading last month and we're moving along on that. So
Can you explain what that is?
so it's more of a, instead of, it's a locked box. So everything will be more computerized and money's locked as opposed to in a shoebox and locked in the safe. It's always locked in the safe, but it will just be more, it'll automatically hit the account. It generates a receipt. You've seen it, right? When you guys first did it. Steve's not a fan. It's okay. We're going to look at it and see. Alicia purchased it.
yeah, one with shoebox.
Alicia purchased it. And yeah, so we're looking to try to implement and get it started. And then implement ClearGov to all departments this next fiscal year. So we opened it up to a couple people to put their narratives in to see how they did with it. This next budget cycle that we do, it'll be more interactive for all the department heads to go in, put their narratives in, and then we'll still control the GL piece of it and the numbers. So it'll just be for them to update and review the budgets more live. So our only increase this year is in wages. Expenses stayed the same. This is collectors, same thing, no increase in expenses, wages increased. Tax title, we keep the same. That's all I use for legal fees to collect tax title. That is it. Does anybody have any questions? Off the hook.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you.
We're gonna try to fix this for you. Okay.
Good evening, Michelle Reynolds, Town Accountant. Don't know what page because I didn't know I was supposed to reference to the page.
County is page 118. 118.
And we're going to start with accomplishments for calendar year. We had some turnover. I was for a little while Department of One, and we had someone come in as a financial analyst, and he decided to depart for Texas. So it took a few months to hire an assistant town accountant. That happened in January of 24, and then our financial analyst in June of 24. I will have to say we're very pleased. We're getting a lot of help so I can focus on the higher level tasks, and the financial analyst is a lot of her focus is the 3 projects we have going on: the senior center, 36 King Street, and the Sugar Lane feasibility. So we gather the invoice packets from the vendors, look at the change orders. There's a lot of going back and forth, and it's really coming to a head now with, buying FF&E for these sites and keeping track of all the change orders and make sure we're communicating all this information to Ryan and also the OPM, make sure we're all in sync together and making sure we're not missing any items. So that's like right now is actually a very busy time. We'll be pleased when these come to completion. The other focus for the financial analyst is tracking of gifts and grants. Grants has just taken this higher level at this point. And we've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes, tracking, making sure people are in compliance, really getting into the nitty gritty of looking at the contract details and kind of parsing this out by department so we know who's in charge of each grant. We completed an update to the financial software in May. So that was a minor update, but it takes not just the accounting team, but treasurer's team as well. And that's about it, other than the annual reporting to the state between the tax rate, Schedule A, and the balance sheet. Goals for 26. Additional training for our own department, as well as the other users of the financial software. Every department uses the software in some form or another. We're primarily focused on budget, expenses, accounts payable, purchase orders, things of that nature. And we'd like to roll out additional training, especially for new users in different departments, as well as leveraging the system for ourselves. As I mentioned, enhanced gift and grant tracking and reconciliation, make sure people aren't overspending grants, and also more enhanced tracking of, who's responsible for their submissions on grants to ensure we're getting, reimbursed for that money in a timely manner.
On the grants, I know some of the grants have like an overhead that you can charge back. Or are we trying to figure out what our overhead rate is and leveraging that at all?
Haven't seen any of that other than in Green Communities grant, where I know Diane Dickerson's time was accounted for through the grant, but I really haven't seen it. And a lot of the other ones are direct just for equipment, things like that. I haven't seen any. And then continue to leverage the software for better optimization of resources. That's meaning evaluating with the treasurer's team what's available in the modules of the software, and learning about new features in the software as they come along, every couple of months, you say, hey, there's a new feature in there that we didn't know about, and we sometimes learn it by accident. But, with now a full staff, we can kind of focus on those things and go out to webinars through the software's website and actually get some advanced training and deploy that to people and make their lives easier. Have no capital requests. And no capital 5-year capital plan. So, just budget request highlights comparing year over year. As I really got into looking at, our expense budget for the past 2 years and looking to this one, and looking at actuals, I think with previously we had a finance director within our department. And since we took that out, we could bring down the conferences, dues, travel, each of those. A small increase in supplies, some reporting firms that we have to order every year. And with office supplies, with now a staff of 3, we need a little bit more, but not much. Decreased need for outside consulting as I'm getting more experienced in the town accountant role and been going to classes myself. That helps to ease the pressure for consulting. Consultant in particular is, their rate goes up every year and it's up to about $300 an hour. So you pay for the technical expertise, but we also take that from them and learn and keep that within the department. Wages was just a step increases for the department. Do we have the change? I don't think the change is listed on here.
I don't think there are any changes.
I think the total expenses changed slightly.
Okay.
$1,000, I think. Accounting services is the biggest line in the expenses, and that covers the ClearGov budgeting software, which is used by accounting, treasury, finance director, PACE education training, which is training through our financial software folks, and that we haven't really deployed it outside of accounting, treasury, and payroll. And now we're at a good point where we're going to have some coverage in the school department, and we can actually deploy it to them and say, okay, take a half a day and here's all the things you're going to need to have the basics on. And so it's a virtual train with a live person. You attend for 2 to 3 hours and get some training on your own. And then you come back to us with additional questions unique to how we operate. So there's annual cost for that. And then just the outside consultants. Like I said, we're trying to pinch back on what we might use for consultants. We do need them as expertise outside when we don't have the answers.
Michelle, who's our audit firm now?
Who's our audit firm? Roselli. And I had asked Tony for an update in any pricing change for next year. And he said, no, potentially because we had a single federal audit in future years, in the 5-year operating needs, that could be, $5,000 or so increase in audit, depending on the level of grants that are funded through the federal government. But we don't know that pricing yet until we start to accumulate more grants. And that's just, typical software increases for ClearGov, PACE education. That's all I have.
Is Roselli under contract, right? Jim?
Roselli is under contract, yeah. So but we've, part of the issue is there's been so much consolidation for auditing firms now. So now they're Roselli Clark are one of the few local companies that haven't been bought up by a larger national firm. So we like that you can pick up the phone and talk to their team, and we've had a good rapport with them. And so
Yeah, I think we need to, need to be renewing
right.
the contract.
Mhm. Right.
But
So
the
far-
other firm we had, Melanson, was gobbled up by Markham, who is now owned by CBiz. So the amount of firms is dwindling. And I've seen a lot of chatter about, municipalities having issues with getting their audits done. It can take an extra 6 months to get their audit done. You can't get your financials, which could impact your bond rating.
And it's also to the people who are actually entering this, there's a dearth of accountants. So we see, they're saying that's a continuing issue as well.
Yeah, you don't want to lose your accountant.
Yeah.
You have to pay a consulting firm big bucks to have that available. And they're even stretched.
So since you guys ran through this so quick, I actually had a question on the collector part. One, the postage number seems outrageously low. It says $400 for postage, which seems very low for all of the bills that I get in the mail. And I don't know what other services is. I know it's a catch-all for everything, but it's a very big number, and it just says other services, $34,000.
On the collector. So.
Oh, no, so they go to Kelly Brown.
So Kelly and Ryan does provides the billing. And also the postage is part of that tax billing fees on their services.
So that's what the other services. Okay. So it's because we're outsourcing it by extension
correct.
for postage. Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Given the number of bills I get, I assumed something was off.
Not all $400 are being spent on postage to send bills to you.
Close. Yes. Okay,
It
thank you.
seems that way.
All set?
Yep.
Thank you, Michelle.
Veteran Services, page 239.
Hey, John Broski, Veterans Agent. Mostly the major accomplishments are the normal stuff, the Memorial Day Parade. Also creating an inventory of, the West Lawn, the cemetery, all the veterans at the cemetery. I've done that. Keep track of all the ones that come in. To make sure the grave markers are in good shape or missing, not missing. Got quite a few, which I've got to try to order sometime or other. Also the Veterans Day activities. Meaning the service at the Common or something like that. And, my department goals are to improve the communication with the veterans in town and also try to get the additional names that were missed on the memorials at the Common. Try to get those in place somehow or other. Please, hopefully get a grant or something like that. Also to become a Purple Heart community. I think that's something that we should do to recognize our injured soldiers. So. Operating budget. The meetings and conferences increased by $50. That's only, I don't know how many we're gonna have this coming year, but I know this year it's been crazy. Postage, that's increase of $240. Yeah, I want to do at least once a year, do a mass mailing to all my veterans in town to find out, see if there's any changes or whatever. To find other ones too, the ones I don't know about. Travel line, that's due to conferences and stuff like that. Increase in requested expenses. Only $309. Good. The wages are there, an increase. Excuse me. Revised operating budget adjustments, meetings, conferences increased by, we already did that, we. Postage line increase, travel line increase.
I think this is reflecting some
Huh?
increases we talked about, John, to add, make sure you had enough to do.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah.
Small line.
I think we're all set on that. No problems.
Just as an add-on for everybody too, other things that John does that are also related to this, we also have within the budget, the $10,000 for the VFW rental. We've been doing that on a regular basis. John's active down at the VFW, and you know, we were just at another event down there, John, and for the Christmas event. Very, you know,
Yeah.
it's a great thing, and so
Nice
it's in
place.
good shape. Yeah, you do a good job down there. And then the other component is veterans benefits. And we're actually, it's going down a bit to reflect what our actual expenses are. You can see our FY24, it was around 106,000. So we're bringing that number down basically to reflect where our activity levels have been. Keep in mind that for veterans benefits, they're reimbursed 75%. So when John meets with a veteran, lines all that up, and you know, we pay for that on the front end, but then we get back 75% on the cherry sheet and reimbursement the following year
It just comes back to the general fund and to.
through cherry sheet. Yes.
So the 120,000 represents our 25% number that we're paying.
No, it's the full amount.
It's the full amount, yeah. That you guys.
75% from that.
Piggyback.
Usually it's a year after the actual expenses went out, usually is when you get them reimbursed. They do it on a quarterly basis.
The 175 we budgeted
Yeah.
last year was kind of just an outlier. It's
What
more
you
in
get,
line with the 120.
yeah, what you get in September, it's like from last year's September quarterly stuff that we put out. So that type of thing.
So
It's
we're
always a year
expecting to
behind.
spend 120, but we're going to expect to get 95 back.
Correct.
Yeah.
Next year.
Next year, right? It's the
So
following
there's a
year.
line item somewhere
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
95 coming
Yeah,
in.
it's the state aid. It's the
It's a
state
cherry,
aid.
it comes off the
Yeah,
cherry sheet.
state aid.
Yeah.
Right.
Anything else for John?
Yeah.
Great job.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so next up, this is, we don't have any page numbers because this is a little bit all over the place, but this is the, as Steve had hinted at, we were at the section where we're at miscellaneous departments and more miscellaneous committees and boards. So first piece is the Disability Commission staying the same at $1,200. You know, so this is something new that we introduced in FY21. So just keeping that the same. Memorial Day, this is keeping this the same at $1,250. No changes there. Historical Commission budget, keeping this the same at $4,480. You want to talk a little bit about the 250th anniversary, or we have the Patriots Day, if you remember, that's coming up, and Patriot Beverage is made a donation. So between them making the donation, we are funding, I think it was a $10,000 request for them to run their activities. The
Who's
250th.
driving that bus? I mean,
What's that?
who's driving that bus? It's only 2 months away.
It's the Historical Commission.
Linda Stein.
And so, and the nearly 5,000 is for other activities like, you know, parades, special events, reenactments, and, you know, that kind of thing. So, and that changes every year, in terms of a.
So
a
we
baseline
upped their
request.
budget for that last year. A few $100 to 4,000. I need 4,000 again.
This is what, so this is what they're saying. It's one thing that, this is one of the challenges we have. Like, it's one thing to say to a department and say, okay, what's your spending trends? But if it's a board or committee, different conversation. So, it's something we can follow up with. I can follow up with Linda on if you'd like, but, this is what they're saying.
I think part of the money was for 12 Robinson Road, for the, preserving
The preservation restriction.
yeah.
That's part of what they were spending it on.
This year or last year?
Well, the preservation
Going forward.
restrictions, it's going to continue. So for them to maintain it, and I think that's
It's like the
requires an
inspection
annual report.
services, consulting services
Yeah.
for it.
But
I
we,
think that might be part of what their budget was.
I think that might be. Okay. But I can follow up on that and get back. Cultural Council, $5,600, keeping that the same. 24 actually were right there. They kind of fit their programs into what they have in terms of their resources. Shade Tree Commission is requesting $5,000. I wanted to highlight this to note for the select board and the finance committee that Shade Tree Commission is working with town council to potentially propose a warrant article for the May 6th annual town meeting. Karen, I don't know if there are any updates on that, but I know that they were working toward that. We put them together, and so they talked about maybe doing it last fall, but weren't ready. And I think they're still on target to bring something forward for the annual. Okay. So just to let you know, I don't think there'll be a cost implication for the change or for the article they're bringing forward, but still give you a heads up. You might be seeing something on that end. PMBC, so based on actual spending of what PMBC's been spending, we had in FY25, it was $5,000 budgeted. And so based on past experience, we're bringing that down to $650. So that is something that we're trimming. And I do want to note, while not in here as well, we did have a meeting with the Clean Lakes Committee. They've been put forward a request, and I think what is in here is a new line item for Clean Lakes based on how active they've been, and I think we were putting in as a $10,000 line item for them in this year as a new request from Clean Lakes. So. Just to make you aware of that.
That has worked into your numbers already?
It's included in the budget right now. Yeah. So I should have called that out here, but because it was new, that's why it is not here, but should have been highlighted. And that's why I wanted to call it out now.
We know what they're going to spend the $10,000 on?
You recall what things they. Yeah, they're part of what they're transitioning from is there's a lot of capital requests that they're putting in on that LELWD is assisting them with. So I think it's something that they're beginning to transition a little bit and trying to figure out what those needs are. So this is sort of a starting point. We'll see how it goes with them. But as I said, it's a little different with a board or a committee asking for money to be included versus department.
Brian, is that going to include, for example, their permitting costs?
It could, yeah, it's more of an operating, more of an operating thing as opposed to capital.
So they're looking for permitting for pulling out some of the invasives. That requires a certain amount of sampling. So for example, I think they have to pull 11 samples from Long Lake in order to submit the pre-survey to be granted a pre-meeting so that they can have a pre-discussion on on the possibility of being potentially granted a permit to do the project. So I think my guess is that it includes some of those expenses. The permits themselves requests, incur some costs, but I would guess at least some of this is sampling.
Anything else you'd want to highlight, Jim, on Clean Lakes? Just, okay, all right. Anything else on miscellaneous, our miscellaneous departments and, sorry, boards and committees?
It's a sustainability.
Sustainability is in there as well, right? That hasn't changed. I should have added that too. So I will make a note to add both to thank you. Yes, we did not forget about them either. So,
And they have a grant for the sustainability manager, whatever, but that's not covered. That's covered by the grant, not the budget.
all right.
That's correct.
Yeah.
It's a regional thing.
So for this this last section, I may be looking over at Robin on some of this and Michelle, but this is our insurance and transfers and so for both property as well as employee benefits. So let's start off with property and liability. We are not proposing any changes in this. It's primarily because in FY24 our rate came in lower than what we had budgeted. So we do anticipate an increase in FY25 from our property and liability insurer, Maya, but we think we can absorb it based upon what the projection is and where we are right now. So this was, again, based primarily because the prior, it should be fiscal year 2025, my apologies, came in lower than expected. So we think we can absorb that. So that remains unchanged at 583,000. So want to move over and talk a little bit about transfers. This is all the transfers to other departments or funds, such as capital stabilization or debt exclusion stabilization fund. This is partially as part of the our financial policies that we have requirements to meet minimums on. So so updates since we put the budget together, we're transferring $100,000 to the general stabilization fund, increasing the ending balance to approximately 4.4 million. We are for the as it relates to the capital stabilization fund, we are transferring in about 1.9 million from free cash and revising our transfer out amount to 1.3 million. When we get to the capital plan, we'll see that 1.3 million is intended to cover the one of the fire truck replacements. Basically with that as a net increase, our capital stabilization fund balance should increase to about $5.5 million. And one of the things that, and to let Steve speak to this, is we've got a few other things that are coming on down the road, especially with fire, 2 vehicles over 2 years. And so the thinking at this juncture is that we'll be pulling from the capital stabilization fund to fund those potentially. That's what we're, at least in our mind, what we're looking to fund that. So Steve, anything to add to that?
No, it's one of the things that I'm looking for. So for our Saturday capital discussion, we'll detail out the capital plan and how we're gonna do everything that's on the capital plan. So that's my goal for that Saturday.
Okay. Then we get to the school building stabilization fund. This has been a topic we've spent a lot of time with. Steve in particular has done a lot of work trying to figure out ways in which we could begin to set more aside with the school building stabilization fund, specifically, and with keeping in mind that with the Shaker Lane School coming on, to be able to address the fact that this will be a debt service exclusion and there'll be expenses associated with that. And so we're trying to find ways to reduce the cost to the average taxpayer and homeowner. So items we're looking to do for this in this cycle that we're committing to is a $1 million baseline transfer from free cash, which is part of the initial program that Steve's proposed, based upon a very favorable free cash we're looking at a free cash certification, which is 11.5 million, at least that's preliminary. I don't think we've heard back from DOR yet, in terms of affirming that, but we think conservatively, that's probably what we'll be at 11.5 million. We're proposing another 600,000, transfer from free cash. We've had a recent conversation, Jim participated, Fred, Steve, with schools. And, Steve, do you want to talk a little bit about what we're planning on that? I mean, basically yeah, if you give a.
So, like Ronnie said, we met with the school department last week. And one of the things that we've been talking to the schools about in the policy meetings that we had is their level of school choice money. And they don't really have a policies to spend that money. And we had agreed in those policy discussions that their balance should be about 10%. Their goal balance should be about 10% of the budget, which should be around 2.6 million. They currently have 3.6 million in the accounts. So one of the things that we went to talk to them about is how they could contribute to the Shaker Lane project. And the thing that Jim came up with was paying for capital. So they agreed that over their capital plan, that they would pay for their capital items, except for the roofs and the boilers and things like that, the big things. They would pay for those items out of their school choice funds, or however they can fund them. And we would take that money that we would have spent for those items and put it into the school building stabilization fund. They have maybe a goal in mind of, correct me if I'm wrong, but the number that sticks in my head is somewhere around 400,000 or so per year.
They've agreed to this.
They have agreed to this, and
Wonderful. That's amazing.
it's very generous on the school department's
Yeah.
point of view, and they see the need to contribute to the project, and they're doing it. So, in the out years, when the roofs come in, there's 1 year that's very thin as far as other capital projects for the school, but the next year is pretty heavy. So we may see a small number going in 28 or 29, but the next year kicks up to 800,000. So they save their money in 1 year and pay for it the next, which is great. And all that money will go into this stabilization fund.
Yeah.
I think you're missing one thing on this.
It's a bunch of that's never funded by Cap State. That was the track CPC funds that we had a budget against. So
Right.
I don't know if the school's gonna do that contribution.
School is going to do, the school is doing that, but it's going to send the money to CPC.
CPC.
So it's not.
But it's decreasing our contribution to CPC.
It was coming out.
Okay.
Yep.
I see the logic now. Yeah, so we
So
can tag on another
the
100.
number is actually a little over $2 million.
Yeah, so I don't know that. And the 30,000 in unspent school spending, I think is part of the changes we made at the fiscal policy, which was basically saying if the schools turn back funds at the end of a fiscal year, then those funds would be applied toward the school building stabilization fund the following year. So,
Correct.
so they turn back 30,000.
Unofficial until we get the
Mhm.
certification back from the state to say that, yes, the schools contributed 30,000 of free cash.
Mhm.
Or if they do more or less, we'll adjust that. That's all. Wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. It was a very good meeting.
Right. I think the thing is, the takeaway from it is the schools realize how important the Shaker Lane project is. And, I think it's important for all of us to sort of be rowing in the same direction when it comes to this, and being able to defray these costs and thinking ahead and planning ahead is something that is absolutely necessary to move forward a project of this scope. So it has been, I agree with Steve, it's very hard. And so basically you take the $1,910,000, you add another 120,000 on that, and then that's where we are in terms of a contribution to the school building stabilization fund. So
Just for clarity,
Mhm.
we already have the $1 million in there, or we're putting,
we know, we have put
the
$1 million.
baseline doesn't, we're contributing another million. We're gonna end up with a balance of 2 million, not 3 million.
So,
Was $1 billion from last year.
yes. So just,
If that's the baseline number, we're just.
actually, if I could get to the next slide, so then take the, there's your fund balance is about 3 million, you add another $120,000 onto that, so.
So the baseline was what we were going to contribute this year. We started with $1 million, now we're adding 2 million this year.
Correct.
Right, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that we've ended the year better than what we thought, with in terms of free cash. So again, that figure has yet to be fully certified, but we think we're close, at this time. So again, if you're looking at, like 3.2 million, right now, and that, it's a great way to start and begin to plan for what we know is going to be the biggest project we've ever funded as a town.
And it just give you some idea of the levels here. Last week at our meeting, talked about taking that number, reducing the construction costs, and the number that I used was a little over $4 million, $4,180,000. Adjusting for this, we're probably around $6 million now. For what we can do because of the school changes, because of the extra we're able to put in, and that doesn't count for what could happen in future years if the school decides to contribute a little bit more. But it's all positive for that. It takes down their tax bill.
See, when you first had proposed this plan last week, the week before something, I was concerned that it was going to be at the expense of in the operating budget or the capital expenses, and that's not what I'm seeing. So I'm very, very happy here.
That's what we'll see on that Super Saturday session.
Yeah, no, it's awesome.
So as far as the capital improvement plan, we establish our capital budget based on our fiscal policy and come up with an amount. So the total amount that was available for capital project funding in FY26 is $1,568,616. For the proposed budget, before we've made any changes to the schools, we were roughly at about 1.3 million. That meant that the 200 is about $270,000 is available. So we've already kind of accounted for the school projects in the prior slide. But the 270,000 that's available, I believe we'd be transferring that over and looking at Rob and make sure I'm right to the capital stabilization fund, and that's
So
already
we
accounted.
reduce what we're taking out of stabilization for the fire truck by the 270?
It would be essentially something that we're contributing now to the capital stabilization, which would then be utilized to pay for that. Yeah. All right. So there's a couple other things. OPEB, our FY26 budget includes a baseline contribution of $843,849 and an extra contribution of $653,374. So roughly about 1.5 million. Just to remind everybody, we make contributions to OPEB. OPEB stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits, such that if we have, say, a police officer who retires at 56, we're obligated to continue to pay for their health benefits until such a point that they become Medicare eligible. So there's that. That is something that's been identified throughout municipal government as an expense. We continue to try to get ahead of that by making these extra contributions. We have this audited every other year. What's our schedule now? I think, when do we think we'll be fully funded? Yeah, a full audit, or that, right. 26. So, right. And I think that in terms of the schedule, we were looking at the schedule earlier, Robin. How many more years are we looking at?
It changes.
Right, it changes upon who, yes.
Investments, right? We were looking at it,
Mhm.
the insurance, we don't think they count that out very well, so that's gonna probably change next year.
Right.
About that.
Right. We have benefited in terms of with OPEB and retirement in terms of those extra payments, just because the market has been doing very well. So we've benefited from that, and it's allowed us to make a few tweaks to both of those accounts.
Before how does the level of the extra contribution compare to last year? Because I know we had still made extra, but reduced the amount of the extras. How does this compare to our standard extra?
Yeah. I can't
I
remember.
had at the original, so that baseline, you see the 843, it was much higher. I don't have this sheet of your
Right.
cuts, but
It's
between OPEB and pension, the cuts from the original budget was significant.
Yeah, I not on me, but both of them, we were able to tweak both the OPEB and the retirement numbers. And mainly that's because both of the valuations were done on both of them, meaning we were already, within our goals and adjusted it accordingly.
And that 843, the only reason we put the extra money to it was on this last valuation report. The assumption of a health benefit increase was 8%.
Right.
And the actual is going to be somewhere in 15% this year.
Mhm.
So we're putting the extra in it just to keep ahead of that increase, because what the report showed is a 1% change off that 8%, doubled our liability. So 6 times that. We want to stay ahead of what that number is.
Oh, yeah, no, I understand the extra is wonderful, paying down your debt early, all that. I know we had always been doing extra, and then we reduced the amount of the extra, and so this is.
And this would have been a very good year to reduce it even further until we saw that change.
So it's basically even extra. Ish.
Yeah.
Close, yeah.
Right.
So it's $1.3 million higher for Middlesex with the prior, from the prior valuation of what we have for this year. For 26.
Right.
Let me see.
Yeah, so OPEB's one thing, and then, yeah, right. So that's what Robin was just saying. So we actually reduced that from our initial take by about 1.3 million. So the budget includes a baseline contribution to the retirement fund for Middlesex County of about 2.6 million, and then the extra contributions about as close to 400,000. So just south of 3 million. So this is continually looked at by the retirement fund as an audit, auditing that and changing, looking at what that looks like. Same thing with the OPEB. So in this case, we benefited greatly by the fact that the market was, what did you say, Steve, 20%?
2 years in a row, 20%.
Yeah, close to 20%. So we benefit from that when the market performs well and lowers our it lowers our requirements. So from that. So,
I found it interesting looking at these Middlesex County retirement numbers. If you look at our unfunded liability, in 2016, it was 22.3 million. In 2024, it's 22.9 million. It's almost 23 million. Even though we've been contributing so much extra, our unfunded liability is actually increased.
You know, and adding employees, your salaries are going up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The values of the assets,
By doing,
but the unfunded liability is not decreased.
but by doing these extra payments, we're keeping up the. If,
We're not fully.
if you see what our funded is,
Yeah.
and against what county is, we're way ahead of the county. So.
It's compares to other towns, commercial.
Right. It's one of those sort of strange things, and that on paper, you're right. It seems as if we're just treading water, but if we hadn't been making those payments, it would be just that much harder to. And
Treading water is better than drowning.
That's a good point. So, Steve had hinted about benefits or mentioned that earlier. This is one of the line items that we're increasing significantly. We're looking to increase our benefits by $915,481, or basically close to 16%. It's broken down by 15% for active employees and 17.5% for retired employees. So this is the initial figure that Maya provides us with. Person comes out, tells us what we can anticipate. The Maya then establishes a range. That range is released. It'll be released this upcoming Friday at the MMA meeting. So, and then with that, we're somewhere in that range. And where we are depends on our actual experience. We've been doing okay. We're kind of in the middle. We anticipate if there's a range, we should be probably in the middle of that, but that will depend. So the actual figure, we're not going to get back until late March. But if this is as high a rate as I've ever budgeted for. So my sense is that because of the sticker shock, there'll be a lot of pressure on Maya to bring that figure down. But it's it's no different than what we're seeing in the private sector, that this continues to be a real budget buster, to have to continue to pay for healthcare, and it just continues to be more expensive. I don't know, and the service you get for it really isn't necessarily that much better. So this is us planning for where we're at right now, and to be determined in late March what the actual figure will be. And I think that concludes it in terms of where we're at. So we're continuing to look at all of these things. They continue to be fluid, but the health insurance and these other transfers are really big dollar items that we're trying to plan for. But they're also trying to complement as well with Steve and what we as a finance team are trying to accomplish in setting money aside specifically for the Shaker Lane project and our capital stabilization fund, which will help smooth out some of those other needs that we see coming in on the capital side of things. So that's it.
Okay, great. We're
5 minutes over.
5 minutes over.
Mm.
Come on, pretty good.
Move to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.